Good evening, everyone. Are you having a great time, a great week at SciTech? Glad that you are here. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to tonight's panel, Women Driving the Future of Aerospace. My name is Sonya Smith, and I am a principal aerospace engineer working at the Air Force Research Laboratory at the Aerospace Systems Directorate. I'm looking forward to moderating this panel, which I am confident that it is going to be very thought-provoking discussion going on today. So throughout my career, I have witnessed the transformative power of diverse perspective, how they drive innovation, tackle complex challenges, and lead to technological development. This evening is all about celebrating that diversity, not just through the incredible experiences and insights of our esteemed panelists, but also through the energy, the curiosity, and the expertise that all of you in our audience bring to this space. Aerospace has always been about breaking barriers, national, cultural, or even atmospheric. So at its heart, aerospace is not just technology. It is about people, our ideas, our collaboration, and our shared drive to keep moving forward. So our distinguished panelists embody that spirit. Let me introduce them to you. On my left is Dr. Anna Maria McGowan, NASA Senior Engineer for Complex Systems Design at Langley Research Center. Then we have Dr. Melike Nikbay, Professor at Istanbul Technical University. We have Dr. Sonya Smith, Professor at Harvard University. And then our own, well, AFWERX's own, Karen Roth, Deputy Director at AFWERX. Unfortunately, Cassi Miller from GE could not join us tonight. So these remarkable women represent the powerful impact of diverse voices in shaping the future of aerospace. Each one of them has made impact in a different way. So we will dive into their journeys, explore the challenges they have faced, and learn how those challenges have shaped them. As I like to say, we thrive not in spite of challenges, but because of challenges. So our goal tonight is not only to celebrate their accomplishments, but to inspire and empower the next generation of women leaders in aerospace to create a future where innovation knows no boundaries. So thank you for joining in this meaningful conversation. Let's get started. What I have for the next phase is going to be the panel discussion. And what I have done, but before that, I have asked each panelist to introduce themselves by sharing what inspired them to pursue a career in aerospace, what keeps them motivated, and how they inspire others. I have also asked them to reflect a bit on some of the unique challenges they have faced as women in their professional roles and how they overcome that. Let's get started in the order we are seated.
Sure, I'll get started. So my name is Anna Maria Rivas McGowan. As Sonya mentioned, I work at NASA. And what inspired me originally is that aerospace is cool. And I had that thought, I mean, if you're looking for something fascinating, it's just cool. It's amazing. 30 years later, it's still amazing. It's a fascinating profession, and it never gets old. Rocket launches, takeoffs of airplanes, amazing, really fun. So I'm inspired by the mission we have. You know, aerospace changes the world, and that still is very inspiring to me. And you also mentioned how do I keep myself motivated? Really, it's learning something new, and that is also a risk, right? Because It's easier to stay in the same area and become an expert so you can continue publishing in that one area. And that is one career path. But for me, what has been inspiring is to try something different, to learn something outside of my field, and then I grow and I'm better able to work with those other professionals in a more effective way. I think the third question you asked was a unique challenge in being a woman in the field. I would say that for me, I'm going to not talk about gender, but really just culture. I'm a first-generation American. My family is from the lovely small island of Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know how many folks from the Caribbean we have in the audience. Any Caribbean folks in the audience? A handful out there. And so those who are, my culture, I'm not really African American, I'm really Caribbean American. We have a different accent as well. Our food from Trinidad is very different. At home, our culture is very different than what many are expecting. And so part of it is just being comfortable with my different cultural background and being willing to bring that to the office without bringing smelly curry into the office, even though that's exactly what I want to do. So it's learning how to share who I really am in the office in a comfortable way, because sometimes people are uncomfortable having a diversity conversation. So,
great. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure and privilege for me to be here today. Thanks for the invitation. I would like to give some brief information about my background. I was born and raised in Turkey, Istanbul. So I studied mechanical engineering as an undergraduate at Boğaziçi University, and then did my master's again at mechanical engineering. And then I was inspired by aerospace because mechanical engineering was not enough for me. I really wanted to have some, background in flight and, as you said, rocket propulsion, aerospace, so that was really cool. So I started my PhD at University of Colorado Boulder. So I completed my master's and PhD at University of Colorado Boulder. And then I moved back to Turkey to continue my career in my home country, to serve my nation, to serve humanity, actually, because aerospace is very global career and it's very multidisciplinary also. So I started my career as a research and development leader in a defense company, and then I was challenged to go back to the academia. So I really like teaching, I really like being with young people, supporting them, helping them in their career and touching their lives. And also, of course, I really like research. So I started my career in Istanbul Technical University like 20 years ago. So I also have another hat. I am chair of astronautical engineering department in Istanbul Technical University. So I have both research, teaching, and also some management responsibilities. I really enjoy it because we can really make a difference when we are trying to manage the groups, the departments, so we can raise our voices in that manner. So I also have another hat, which is a NATO Science and Technology Organization. I have been working at NATO STO for more than 16 years. So I carried out different roles, like leadership roles, technical contributions. So I also very much appreciate the collaborative program and the collaboration platform that NATO Science and Technology provides us. So I have been the technical committee chair for mechanical system structures and materials, and also I have been the committee chair of support committee, which is a platform to support research between NATO nations. I have received Excellence Award in NATO Science and Technology, which was also very, I was very proud of it. So anything, like research, teaching, collaboration, these are very exciting for me in my career. Thank you.
Thank you, Melike. Thank you.
So my name is Sonya Smith. I'm a professor in mechanical engineering at Howard University. I'm also the executive director of the Research Institute for Tactical Autonomy, University Affiliated Research Center, which is the Air Force's first UARC. My graduate degree is in mechanical and aerospace engineering. But we talk about challenges. When I graduated with my PhD and got my faculty position, the aerospace industry took a deep dive. And so there was no funding for the things that I was doing, hypersonics, high-speed aero, so I had to diversify. But you know, there are always two sides to every coin. So that challenge became my greatest asset because it taught me how to reinvent myself, how to learn new things and diversify. And it's helped me in my career to be successful as a faculty member and the other things that I'm working on, such as tactical autonomy. The things that keep me motivated is getting more students and people into aerospace engineering. I was fortunate I had parents that, you know, allowed me to play with rockets, you know, probably much to their chagrin. But, you know, I was able to cultivate that interest. And what motivates me is being able to cultivate that in my students, to bring them to conferences such as AIAA, to have them present here and to expose them. And I think that's one of the things that I gather the most joy out of, is making sure that there's opportunity for my students in this space.
Hi, my name is Karen Roth. I'm probably the most non-traditional in terms of how I got into aeronautics. This is actually my first time at AIAA, and that's because I'm a software engineering by training. And so I didn't have a lifelong dream of flying an airplane or getting into the industry, but I went to college for software engineering thinking that I would be a programmer for Microsoft. I came out of college knowing I did not want to be a programmer for Microsoft, and but had a deep love of engineering and systems engineering, just with that bent on software design. So when I was looking for jobs and I had a couple different offers, you know, I went and talked to a random person at a random conference from the Air Force who was from Rome, New York, and I said, I have no idea where that is. But whenever I went to visit that organization, they had the most interesting large-scale challenges and interest for systems engineers. And so I ended up going and working for the Air Force. And while I worked for the Information Directorate out of the Air Force Research Laboratory for a long time, you know, I really built that competency up in the rest of the industry as a result of that. And I actually left and I worked for Sikorsky Aircraft for a little bit and continued to build on that systems engineering background really there. And now I work in an organization called AFWERX, where I represent all of the industries. And so it's really fun to go back and look at, you know, my chief engineer is a hypersonics engineer by training, whereas I'm an information engineer by training. And so being able to really work with all of the different industries as we find the best, neatest new technologies for the Air Force through mechanisms like the Cyber Center program and our prime programs for the Air Force really makes me a better systems engineer overall too, being able to work with so many great engineers, and then it's starting to come to these other different types of industry conferences that historically I haven't been as in depth in, right? From my directorate, we all went to IAAA, because that's where you did the C4I and cyber that was out of my directorate in terms of command and control, information processing, AI, ML, all of that kind of fun stuff. And then more traditionally, I've worked as a cybersecurity engineer by training. When we talk about women in tech, my thing I do on the side is I'm the president of the Society of Women Engineers. And so I think being able to not only see my place in the industry and how knowing how I've been able to be represented differently and look a little bit different as a female, but I've really been able to hear so many great stories over the years from other women in other industries, as well through the work that I've done with SWE. And I think that the one thing that comes out distinctly is that the difference between women in any engineering discipline is that we don't know when we walk into a room whether or not we're going to be accepted for our credentials or not, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's the difference in how I have to walk into a room. If I walk into, I remember this, like whenever I became chief engineer of my directorate, I don't even know how long ago, and I walked into a senior leadership room for the first time and I was wearing a nice little red blazer. I thought I was going to blend in because I was wearing my nice little red blazer and my slacks. I wasn't trying to be too anything, I was just who I was. And I walked into this room and I'm like, oh, I'm wearing red. One of these does not look like the other. And, you know, and then watching how like that distinct difference in some groups I was able to approach quickly and easily and have a technical discussion, and other groups kind of like merged into themselves of like, I don't know who this person is. And I made a distinct difference in myself that I did not look like the others. And made that stand out a little more boldly in terms of being able to find who those people were. Like, I didn't know that I could walk into that room and be accepted for who I was. And those are the differences, and I hear that across any different engineering industry. And I guess the question at hand was, how do you manage that? You manage that by being exactly who you are and continuing to emphasize those differences, because we're the ones that also come in with different ways of thinking and different ideas and how we do that. And so anytime I ever tried to be like someone else, I wasn't having the different impact, though, as a result of that. I was being exactly like the others and having the same ideas and the same way of thinking and the same thoughts. But when I could embrace that red blazer and walk in and be exactly who I am with my own experiences and own differences, I had such a more massive technical impact as a result of that as well.
Thank you so much. Like I had said, like they all come with very diverse background, but are making all this amazing impact. So to the audience, please use the QR code to ask your questions, but I will, and I know that we have quite a few, but I'll start first with a question to all the panelists, is how do you see diversity driving the future of aerospace innovation? I know that you talked about your own experience, but what do you see, you know, the effect of diversity? And can you share any specific examples where diverse perspectives have led to groundbreaking results? And anyone can take the lead.
So I will add something a little different, perhaps. There's plenty of studies out there where we can see diversity has helped. And sometimes we talk about diversity purely as, you know, gender or ethnicity, but it's also upbringing, right? If we have a person on the team that's from a small town in the middle of nowhere, never had the opportunity to go to a STEM camp, but they've taken apart tractors, they're going to really understand how urban air mobility can be applied out in the farm area. They're going to have a more hands-on knowledge. Those in a large city are going to understand the complexities of flying in an urban area. And so our upbringings and the diversity of the experiences that we've had can also add to the conversation where we can say, we don't understand this part here because this team is made up of just city dwellers, and we are ignoring the opportunity to really use aviation to help, I'm going to say, the farming industry, or use aviation to help another industry we haven't even thought about. So I think diversity of background and upbringing also comes in to the conversation that has opened our eyes to how aerospace can be used in more arenas than maybe we're all aware of.
I think that's a very good definition of diversity. There are diverse ways to define diversity. Anyone else wants to?
Maybe I can give some examples from our NATO collaboration platform. In NATO Science and Technology, we have different, of course, different nations, different backgrounds, and we form up research task groups and some organizations among people coming from different nations. So as I mentioned, I have been working in NATO Science and Technology Organization for more than 16 years, and I have been in different research task groups and events. So I really enjoyed and I really appreciated the diversity in our research task groups, because we all have different accents. English is not our native language, so we have Turkish accent, Italian accent, German accent, so everybody is speaking in English but with different accents, and everybody have different education backgrounds and also different way of doing business. But under this unique platform of NATO Science and Technology, we come together and work for a specific problem. Like, for example, multi-fidelity methods for multidisciplinary design optimization. So this has been one of the lecture series topics that I'm directing at NATO, and we have 10 lecturers from different nations. and we are giving like 16 lectures in 2 days and visiting different nations to disseminate this experience and knowledge. So I am really amazed how different people from different backgrounds can come together for a unified impact. Also in this respect, we are also trying to enhance the contribution of women in NATO Science and Technology Organization. So we have been working together on this. So we really don't, we are not looking for only diversity in nations, but also enhancing the contribution of women, raising the voices of women, bringing women to the more leadership positions, letting women to talk, keynote speak in our events. So we are also trying to enhance the contributions of women, making women more visible, more heard in all platforms.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to?
Yeah, I'll just add that, recognizing difference, particularly in some of the systems we've used, has been an enhancement. So for example, in our voice recognition, knowing that sometimes it doesn't work as well with people with different accents, as you mentioned, and then using that knowledge to make the system better. You need to engage the people who are native language speakers in different dialects to make those systems better. We know with facial recognition, all of those things. So embracing that, recognizing it, embracing it can also make the systems that we use, that we're using for our research, that we're using for the warfighter, to make those better.
I think at the end of the day, diversity breaks up groupthink for all of those reasons that you all discussed. Whenever you have different backgrounds, different perspectives, it helps think about problems in different ways. Wall Street requires diverse boards for organizations that are part of publicly traded stocks, and they have data in order to support that diversity has better outcomes with products and is more profitable as a result of that. Wall Street doesn't care about diversity, Wall Street cares about profitability. And so if they have that deep of a data set to actually require that as part of entry into that world, because they know diversity has a profitability impact and better output, then the rest of us should be thinking about that too.
Thank you. I think I'll take a question from the audience. And I think it's something that many of us have heard. So how do you respond to the phrase, "We want you on this team because we need a female perspective"? And Karen, I will ask the SWE president, please wear your SWE president hat, and maybe if you can address this. Or if you want to sort of deflect it, that's fine as well.
If someone is saying, I think it's important to understand context, right? If someone is telling you they want you to be part of the team because you're filling their diversity quotient and that's it, then walk away. You don't want to be that person. But, sometimes people don't know how to communicate in the way that makes sense either. And so understanding context of no, we understand that we need a different way of thinking. Can you help us be that? I think opens up a door in order to have meaningful contribution onto that team. And so, I'm not the world's best communicator. Other people aren't the world's best communicator too. And especially when you have even different, let alone when you have international cultural differences, but even when you have United States regional differences in communication expectations and differences, making sure that you can get to the context and the way that they're trying to ask the question, I think is important. I'm from New York. I'm a very direct communicator, but I'll ask the question very directly and bluntly, but that may not mean that the context still comes along with it. And so digging into that a little bit is important, and making sure that you can have the impact that you want to as a part of that team. I don't want to be on a team where I'm just there to fill a quotient. I'm going to be put in a corner and I'm not going to have anything to do. But if you are able to have the contribution that you want to, whether or not it be technical, management, just having a voice, anything like that, and can get to that context, I think that that's the most important thing.
I think that's fair. And maybe Anna, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll add to that. You know, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility has become a challenging topic for everybody. It's hard to talk about. People are afraid of it. If you mention it, you're pulling the race card, you're pulling the gender card, it becomes sticky. And so if we have leaders or colleagues that have the guts to say and recognize, I'm on an all-male team, this is not going to bring about the best perspectives. We need to diversify this team. We need people from a different gender. We need people in a different age group, from different backgrounds. You know, if we push back and say you should never bring that up, then we're pushing back against the exact thing we want people to recognize. And so when those questions come up, I love how Karen said it. Let's respectfully say, hey, thank you for recognizing that. That is awesome. And I'm happy to be a part, if you are, this conversation. And I'm also going to bring my background in aeroelasticity, in information science, in hypersonics to the table as well. And so let's make the conversation about diversity comfortable, engaging, and it may mean that we are co-educating ourselves, where we say, you know, thank you for the invitation, and let's add a little bit more to that. Because we do need to have those conversations. We do need to recognize when, hey, this is a group of all 20-year-olds, wonderful, new ideas, but do you have experience in that? Or this is a group of all 60-year-olds, do we have some younger voices? But we as leaders, future leaders or current leaders, need to be able to have that conversation.
I think that is very well said, and maybe I'll add to it, is that when a question like that comes up, I tend to think of it as positive, because I tend to think that there's a recognition that it is going to add something to the team. Because I know that a part of me is obviously my female perspective, like you said, but something else is obviously my technical perspective, something is how I was brought up. So all of that is part of me, and I am happy that someone else is recognizing that. So think of it positively, give the other person the benefit of doubt, because we want to have this conversation go forward. Great question. The next question is again from the audience, and this is, how do you see, maybe I'll rephrase the question the way it is asked, that, like Anna brought up, the DEI is not necessarily very comfortable everywhere, and in that environment, how do we attract people of various backgrounds and experiences? What are some of the things that you do as leaders to attract people of diverse background? So Sonya, do you want to?
Sure. I think the starting point is being inclusive. When you're recruiting, when you have opportunities, it's to be inclusive, to make sure that you're going beyond your comfort zone to reach out to different populations, to people with different experiences. So for in academia, for instance, we tend to bias toward the four-year institutions, okay? But being inclusive, there are other types of institutions out there, there are community colleges, et cetera, and making sure that you're reaching out to a diverse set, not only of people, but people who are coming from diverse backgrounds, diverse educational backgrounds for these, for opportunities, for internships, or what have you. And I think if you start there, the conversation becomes less charged, because you're really trying to be inclusive and making sure that you're including as many people as possible from different backgrounds on all axes.
Great.
I can add that. Sure. So maybe we can also consider diversity, not only gender balance or other backgrounds, but also age. In some organizations, we see mostly more senior researchers dominating the organizations or research groups. So we try to bring young people also to the table. I can give some examples from, again, from our research in NATO Science and Technology Organization. We try to bring young professionals also actively into the research groups, into the leadership positions. So I think one of the aspects of diversity is not only gender, but also age. So because young people are really energetic and they work very enthusiastically, and they are really eager on accomplishing new successes. So I think this diversity of energy and age is also very important for us.
Great, thank you. I'll move on to the next question. What advice would you give to a young professional who is ambitious but also family-oriented?
So
Family, yeah.
Family-oriented. I love this question. I would say that success is defined by you and no one else. You subjectively define what success means to you. It may mean that you're a gardener on the side, a soccer mom, a Boy Scout mom, a dad that does carpentry on the side. And so embrace that. We are so much more than our jobs. It is really easy coming to a conference like this to see people, you know, all these people getting awards. They've worked 80 hours a week for the last 20 years, and you're like, wow, I'll never get there. But is there your version of success? You know, I'm going to say my son is here in the audience, and I really wanted to be an engaging mom. And so I turned down promotions for many years because I knew the next level of promotion would take me out of the home too often. And I wanted to be that mom that had the kids over at the house. I wanted to be that mom that went camping and that we would travel together, et cetera. And that meant I had to make some professional decisions as well, and I don't regret any of those. And so be family-oriented. If that is what's on your heart, that is a part of who you are. Our jobs do not define us, but rather we define our jobs. And if one of those jobs is being a mom, or it's being a neighbor, or a caretaker, or a gardener, or whatever else of who you are, that is also our job.
Great, thank you.
One piece of advice I would also give is looking for institutions, be they academic or corporate, that support family-friendly policies. For example, in academia, if you're looking for a university or graduate program, NSF has a program called Advance, and universities buy into Advance to make sure that they have policies to support family-friendly policies. So, for example, a lot of times when you're in graduate school, that's about the time where you want to start a family. You need to be at a university where there are policies that stop the tenure clock for you, while you're going through your pregnancy, and then you can start again. Those kind of things are to look for. There's similar policies, there's similar practices in corporate America. So I would say choose very carefully where you land or where you decide to start your career during the time you want to build your family. It's very important.
Can't emphasize all of those comments enough. And I mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. Anytime I tried to be anyone what I thought I was supposed to be as part of my career, and then sacrificed who I was as a result of that, it never had the best consequences. I've been told many times in my career that my home is in a little 800-person hamlet in upstate New York, right? And so I've been told many times in my career, well, you're just going to have to move somewhere larger. If you're going to have any more of an engineering career or anything like that. You have to move somewhere else, you have to do something else, you're going to have to do, you are not going to excel in this little 800-person hamlet. Well, and we did move at one point in time, and you know what? We spent more time traveling back to home where we wanted to be, where our community was, where our people were, where our family was, than we did trying to integrate into the community, and it was just a job, right? We were not thriving in our life because we had moved because we thought we needed to move in order to excel our career. And guess what? I'm the deputy director of a $1.5 billion portfolio right now in my little 800-person hamlet with a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I run an international nonprofit organization somewhere on the side. You can be what you want to be as long as you understand what your priorities are in your life and your existence and make sure that those come first. I know that's really hard sometimes when you don't know who you want to be quite yet, but I remember even a decade ago, you know, they talked about being on the board of directors as SWE as like something you couldn't do with kids. This is that women's organization that are saying you couldn't do something in a women's organization with kids. That is typically things that we have along with us. And so like sometimes there's times where I'm uncomfortable being an engineering mom because my 5-year-old is a little tiny version of me and has a lot of opinions on things and wants to talk to everyone on calls. And so she'll pop up and she'll say things. She was taking my SpaceWorks director to task on a call a couple months ago and interrogating him because he had a space background because he's a SpaceWorks director. Like, are you in space? Are you calling me from space right now? He did not have kids and he was very confused. It was hilarious for the record. And so even in SWE, I try to be very visible with my children, chaos and all that they bring along with it, to making sure that, you know, I'm visible doing the thing that I excel at, even along with my kids, even when they're in the background yelling at people doing things.
Very well said. And I would add that if you are, you need to find a balance and find good employers. Come and work for the Air Force because we have very good, you know, family-friendly job situation. So absolutely, I think it's a choice that you will have to make. But from the experience of some of us, I think that a choice which might seem hard at that moment, you would realize, you know, 20 years later that because you stayed true to what drives you most, because if your family drives you, if they are the ones that keep you together, then that is what you need in order for your career to be successful. So stay true to yourself. Okay, so another question that has come up is actually pretty cute, is what is one thing you know now that you wish your younger self knew? And who would like to take that?
I'll say one. Just know you're gonna screw up. You're pretty royally sometimes, and more frequently than you would like. And learning how to pick yourself up, apologize to those you may have hurt, and deal with yourself and your team when you do screw up. And then once you've done that and forgiven yourself, then you can learn to forgive and have empathy for another team member when they screw up. And so when you see a leader that is on stage and getting these awards and things like that, it is not because everything we did worked at all. And it means that we actually learned from those mistakes and took those lessons learned into the next project. And so be kind to yourself and be kind to your peers. As we all make mistakes, we all need second chances. Be willing to have the hard and loving conversations with peers when they make mistakes as well. Even when our peers make mistakes in the diversity arena, chewing them out is not going to help advance diversity at all. So be willing to deal with your own mistakes and forgive yourself.
And learn from that.
And learn from them, yes.
And trust me, most of the time, you are the only one who notices that you made a mistake. Others, no one else is paying attention to it. So move on. Anyone else would like to?
I can maybe add something. So I would say failure is not a failure, similar to what Anna said. Failure is an experience. So I would say to myself, like, just be brave and try your best. And even if you fail, it will be a learning experience for your future endeavors. So this is just, relax.
Okay. How can men support women in the workforce? Maybe we should have had a man here, but I think we all have had supportive male colleagues,
Yes.
And we have some ideas about what they can do. Anyone wants to Take it up.
I can start on that. I think that a lot of times being an advocate when your women colleagues are not around. So being a male ally, you privy to conversations sometimes. We all are that. That give you an opportunity to be an advocate and not being afraid to be that advocate. There's a lot of training available for male allies, for women in engineering and other fields. But I think that it's very important to say, if you hear something that is uncomfortable and it's okay to just say, you know what, that you probably want to think about this in a different way. And I think that's very helpful to women in engineering professions and all professions.
No, that's solidly the biggest thing that we talk about in SWE a lot of times is it's the invisible rooms when there isn't someone else in the room to think differently or ask a different question or things like that, of being that voice. You don't have to stand up here on the stage being a DEI expert to be an advocate and making sure that you're taking into account your whole team, whether or not it being a pause to make sure that individually call out each person around the table and making sure that their voice is heard, understanding different communication styles, and making sure that you're tailoring your meetings in order to take into account those different communication styles and ways of thinking. Anything that is a tool for making sure groupthink doesn't take over your team is also a tool for diversity. So use those tools that you're training every day and making sure that your whole team is thriving, you'll have a better impact.
Yeah, and I will add, get educated. I think the majority of our male colleagues want to embrace diversity, but may not have sufficient background or experience to do that well. I think as has already been mentioned, there is considerable data. There are many reports and studies and trainings that can happen. And so just because we have a desire to do something, you may still not do it well. And to become educated, to really understand what the issues are so that you can advocate well for the females on your team. And I'll just give a specific example. You may be excited about having women on your team, but if you don't realize that a woman's voice can often be overlooked, overheard, because it may be softer, it may not be as demonstrative, then you need to step in and make sure that voice is heard in the group, for example. There's an interesting article in Harvard Business Review, I'm not sure when it was published, I think it was in the last 4 or 5 years. It talks about 2018, thank you for that, Sonya. That talks about the double bind that women leaders have, right? It is not sufficient for us to just be competent. We also have to be warm and kind. Male leaders can be purely competent, and that tends to be sufficient, but we really have to have both. So we have to be tough, but nice. We have to be authoritative, but gentle. And that expectation is not held there for men. And before we blame the males for creating these expectations, these are societal norms. They have studied this even in female groups. Females expect this of other females as well. So recognizing these societal norms that are out there and recognizing these double binds that women leaders are in, you can be a better advocate. And so, for example, if a male and a female leader have the same, I'm going to say, strong voice, the female leader will be considered something that starts with a B. You can figure out what that word is. The male leader will be considered, oh, he's strong, taking control. And this is not my opinion. These are studies that have been normed over many, many organizations. So if you recognize that that is the case, you as a male leader can then take more proactive efforts to do that. And I'll just add one more thing is, don't be afraid of the diversity conversation. Yes, it's sticky. Yes, it can be uncomfortable. Yes, you may fail at it. And what we just said, failure is okay. It's a learning opportunity. And I heard a male colleague tell me, Anna, I'm wanting to be so supportive, but I'm exhausted of hearing about diversity all the time. And, just because we are exhausted with hearing about something does not negate the need for it. I'm exhausted about hearing about how many sit-ups I need to do every week. Doesn't mean I don't need to do them still, right? And so similarly, I understand that many organizations today are saying, hey, let's not talk about this diversity thing anymore. It's making people uncomfortable. We are leaders, and this is our profession and our field. If we want aerospace to have the impact that it's going to have, then we can't be afraid of the hard conversations, whether that hard conversation's about hypersonics, putting humans on the moon, or about diversity. Let's step into that with an educated voice, not an opinionated or anecdotal voice. We like to say the plural of anecdote is anecdotes, it's not data. So let's get some diversity data and use that to drive the actions that we have as leaders.
I think that's fair.
I can add. I think, especially in conservative societies, it is difficult to be a woman leader and maybe woman engineer. But you have to deserve the respect from your male colleagues first. So you have to show them that you are a hard worker, you take responsibility, and you are serious. And once you prove yourself, they become very supportive. Because everybody needs people who will do hard work, who will take the lead in all organizations. So you really have to prove yourself first, that you are strong, that you are responsible, you will do your best, and then they support you very well. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so another question that is sort of similar is what advice would you give to a young, timid undergrad who is unsure of whether or not they are up to task?
A young what?
Good. Whether or not
Maybe
up to task.
Up to task.
I can hear that.
I think it depends on what the task is, right? You're an engineer. You've already made it that far. I always tell people, like, just getting through engineering school was the hardest part of your engineering career, right? Now you get to do the fun part. So why not prove it? One of the best advice I ever got from a coach that I had was that whenever I was never sure about how to read a room or whether or not I was doing the right thing or how people were taking in what I was doing was make sure you look at the data, right? You're an engineer, look at the data. Do you have evidence to back up your anxiety or your concerns or your curiosity? Have they said anything, done anything, or anything like that in order to support that? And when you look at that, you can get rid of 80% of your worries right there. And as soon as you lighten your load, all of a sudden you have a lot more room for the fun stuff in order to have the impact, in order to lean forward, in order to take on new challenges and do things. As soon as you put the things that you are placing on yourself that aren't warranted because you're in an unknown quantity and you're not sure what to look for and how to tackle these things, but as soon as you start doing the things that you don't even have the data to support, you're putting an extra burden on yourself and you're taking away from your other capabilities. And that was solely like one of the most impactful pieces of advice I've ever received in my life.
I would say, we all have fears. I cried freshman year in engineering. I was scared to death and I felt underqualified, for sure. I cried before starting my PhD. I think I cried during my PhD. And so the fear is going to happen, right? So there are plenty, again, classes and courses out there. Identify a mentor that can help support you and be a colleague along the way, number one. And number two, understand where some of your weaknesses are. We all have them. Nobody's a perfect engineer, right? So if one of your weaknesses, let's say, is talking in front of people, then maybe you can use Toastmasters or an organization outside of work to build that skill so when you come back in the workforce, you can do that well. If one of your fears is, being able to communicate or to work with others who are different than you, then again, you can become educated and trained in how you do that. At the end of the day, you're gonna just have to get in there. Suit up. You wouldn't have made it into engineering school if someone didn't think you could have done it. And so there's a book that was written quite a long time ago that's entitled Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And so my recommendation is take a small step and try it out and embrace the failures as lessons learned as you grow and become better at it.
Very good advice.
May I just add one thing?
Yes, sure.
everyone on this panel, no matter who, the most confident person, everyone has this tinge of self-doubt sometimes, that feeling like, oh, I'm in imposter syndrome every once in a while. And it's about, as Anna said, moving through that, looking at the things that you have accomplished to date. You would not have been able to do that without some sense of, your own competence, confidence, and drawing on those things to help you move through that tinge of self-doubt and maybe imposter syndrome to do it anyway.
And the next question I would like to ask is, okay, there was a question here. Okay, how do you deflect or redirect focus away from your gender in conversations when it is not relevant to your qualifications? That's an interesting question, and that is why I put it up there.
So a suggestion here, just if gender comes up, your specific gender, well, you're doing this because you're a mother or you're doing this because you're a female. This is to our earlier question of those awkwardness and those difficult times are going to come in, trying to just sidestep them is probably not going to work. And so step into it and say, so why do you ask? Are you concerned about my status as a mother impacting the performance of this team? Are you concerned about my status as an amputee reducing my ability to travel professionally? Can we have that conversation? Is that a hard conversation? Sure, but not having it doesn't solve it either. And so I've certainly had those conversations, and they're not pleasant. And I've tried to avoid them myself. I have gotten awards. I've gotten an AIAA award previously, and I had male colleagues said, well, the only reason you got that was because you're a black female. I wanted to say, and you forgot Hispanic, but I didn't. I did not want to bring it up. I wanted to ignore it and say it's just not there, just let them go into the woodwork. But they created rumor and they made it an uncomfortable work environment, and at some point I had to suck it up and go to management and say, I need to have a conversation. Something is going on here. And they were overwhelmingly supportive, for sure. So I think lean into it and ask questions. I'm learning myself to ask more questions than to be directive and say, well, you're this and you're that. Instead, just ask, where are you coming from? What are you concerned about?
And I would always say that build your own tribe as well, because I think there is nothing better than having a support group when you have situations like this, to be able to ask this thing, has it happened to you? What do you do? Because every situation can be unique. So that can also help you with tiding over sometimes uncomfortable situations. And like Anna said, that sometimes you need to, if it is a long-term relationship or if it is something that you need to preserve, then you have to address the question and see why that came up. Anyone else wants to? Okay, so as a woman in this male-dominated industry, do you ever have moments you doubt yourself? When you do, how do you get over it? I know that we all talked about that we have it, but how do you get over it?
By asking, if not me, then who?
That's so good.
And also focusing, as I said before, focusing on the accomplishments, what brought you, what you've achieved to get, or what I've achieved to get to this point, and focusing on those things. So if there's doubt, it's that, no, you know that you have abilities because you've made it this far, there are obstacles you've been able to overcome. And so if you focus on that, that helps get you through any bouts of doubt.
I'd also say focus on your whole self as well. If you have hobbies outside of the office, this can sound like a crazy divergence, but if doing yoga outside of work really helps you feel better, if meeting with a tribe, if your church community or your workout community, if that really helps to improve just how you feel about yourself outside of, that can go a long, long way. So your outside of work life is a huge part of what you bring to the table at work as well. And so, feed yourself, build your tribe. If you can't build a tribe at work, build it outside of work so that you come into work with a little bit more pep in your step, because absolutely we doubt ourselves all the time. It never goes away, sadly.
Great. I think this will be the last question. So when have you had to stand your ground and say something when you or your team were being taken advantage of because you are a woman?
That's hard, right? Because you have to recognize it on the spot. There's plenty of times where I've looking back in hindsight, because I'm a very introspective kind of person. I need to process first. I think a lot of engineers are like that. They want to process the scenario and the situation. And I think the key part is trying to make sure you don't end up in that situation to start with, right? And here's where I mean by that, of making sure that, asking thoughtful questions when the time warrants. Stand strong always in your stance, and not just when the time warrants of needing to stand strong in your stance because you think that you're being dismissed because of your gender, but always staying strong in your stance no matter the situation. So you gain that respect and authority cumulatively over time. And so when either the scenario is not going to come up, or then it becomes an easy, because you've practiced doing that, of being an authoritative engineer that is competent in their career and what they're doing and are that subject matter expert. Otherwise, you're going to have regrets, right? You're going to look 20/20 hindsight and realize that. You can recover by that by going back and having a conversation again and saying, I don't think I handled that well, or this conversation didn't go the way that I thought it could be. Let's restart this. This is what I meant to say at the time. Can we go about and have that? It doesn't always have the impact you're looking for, but always going back and restarting the conversation is always a choice as well, if it comes up despite your best efforts. And that's when you reach out and also have mentoring on how to tackle it if you're not comfortable in going back and restarting that conversation again, and making sure that you have the people to bounce off of on how to have some of those hard conversations. I know I always look 20/20 hindsight and say, did that really happen the way that I thought it did? What just happened here? And if I don't go back and rectify it though, it's gonna bother me, and I'm always gonna have those regrets. So making sure at the very least, even if you go back and have the conversation again and restart it, you don't have any regrets about how you handled yourself at that time.
I would agree. We all will deal with difficult people, difficult situations throughout our careers, and learning to manage that, learning to stand up for yourself and your team, because they are watching how you as a leader stand up and handle those types of situations, and learning how to do that with grace and respect, and not losing, as I say, losing your cool when others are. If you're dealing with a screamer, it's not, you don't scream back. You have to deal with them in a calm, low voice, and make sure that, again, but you stand up for your team, because people are watching how you, be it students, be it your team, they're watching how you deal with these situations to learn and to see what is the best way for them to handle it as well. So, and you will see those people again throughout your life, the same personality types, you will see them. So learning how to deal with them is one asset you can definitely, a skill that you can hone.
I've had this conversation with another female coworker of mine before, whereas situations like this is where you actually have a leg up, because if you're a mom and you have kids, yes. Because if you're dealing with it, because you said the screamer, there's always one. There's always one in whatever workplace you go to, and I don't know why. But all of a sudden you're building up the skills of dealing with your kids, and we've had to take this pause and remember to use our adult words and not our kid words in reaction to this, yeah. But it helps you deal with situations a lot more calmer too. So remember that being a woman or being a mom and having kids is also an incredible asset in these situations too, because you have much more experience dealing with different personalities. Yes. My 2-year-old is very feisty right now.
Yeah, and adding to that, one thing that's challenging for all of us is, no matter who you are, gender or whatever, age, when we are angry, when we are fearful, When we're highly emotional, we're not using our full brain. And that's well studied in cognitive science. So in the middle of the moment may not be the best time to react because you don't have your full brain that makes you who you are. So in the moment, you may need to say, we're going to take this offline. I'm a little uncomfortable with where this is going, and I'd like to deal with this separately. And some of the comments in leadership training is, connect in person. Thank you, so-and-so, for what you just said. I appreciate you bringing that up. And then correct, not in public. And so then take it offline when you've had a chance to think about it a bit more and have some more reflection, because normally it's not as simple as it looks in person. And there's a reason why something's going on there, and you may need to do a little bit more research. Our first assumption about what's going on is likely not complete. So doing some more research, scheduling that meeting, and going back and having the, uncomfortable one-on-one or one-on-two conversations in a smaller setting where you can really get to it. But in the moment, a chewing out meeting is rarely productive. I'm not sure it ever is. But being ready to say, we need to take this offline. Thank you, let's move on.
Then I think the last question I would do, I was given 5 extra minutes, so best career advice you have ever gotten and by who?
I can add this. I think to be patient with yourself and with your environment is one of the most important things. During my PhD, one of my colleagues, older colleagues, just gave such advice. He said, just be patient, because when you are doing your PhD, sometimes you are impatient to see results or get depressed because some results are not so good. So he told me that build it block by block. Each day put one block to your wall, and then after some time you will have the completed wall. So this now still reflects in me. I just try to be patient and each day put one block.
Anyone else would like to add to that?
I already did mine, which was to focus on the data.
Yeah.
If you're having a hard time struggling to evaluate a situation or what's going on or how to manage it, make sure that you focus on the data, use your engineering skills, and do that first, so that way you can kind of release yourself from the other things and focus on the things that are having an impact, that you can control, that you can work through, that you can do something about, and make sure that you're utilizing those skills for these interpersonal things as well.
Yeah, I said mine as well, is learning how to deal with difficult people, because you will see them again and again, and as you hone that skill, it's something very valuable.
Yeah, and I will just add for mine, I think getting a mentor in different areas is really important, because they can see things in you that you can't see in yourself, and can provide guidance that can validate or correct maybe some of the thinkings. When you have imposter syndrome, they can say, I'm not sure that's true. This is what I see in you. And so the mentors that I've been blessed to have definitely highlighted things in me that I didn't know was an asset. And then I began building my career in that direction. So getting a great mentor and not being afraid to go out and ask, hey, can I just get 30 minutes with you to just talk informally, can be super helpful.
Thank you. And I think I can add mine is that the best advice I ever got is that don't sweat the small things and don't try to do everything. Because sometimes that just takes a lot of effort, and then you don't have the space to look at the big picture. So that is the best advice that I got, because if you try to be perfect at every small thing, then you are not being true to yourself, and you cannot find time to be perfect for the bigger things. With that, I would like to first of all, thank you. We had some very, very wonderful questions, and the panel is going great when you don't want to stop, right? But I think every good thing has to come to an end. So I hope that whether you are a student or an industry leader or an advocate of change, I hope some of this conversation helped you think that your voice matters and you can do things that can change the future of aerospace. And with that, I would like to thank the panelists for sharing their wisdom, and to all of you for your thoughtful engagement, and also to the AIAA staff which made this happen. And I would like to call out the diversity working group and Karen Thomas, the VP for Workforce Development. Thank you so much for your effort. And thanks again. Thanks for coming. Let's keep this conversation going, and safe travel back.